purpose of the Being Different book is to establish what is so different about the Indian civilization that many Westerners come, they appreciate what they're learning, they benefit from it, but there's some boundary they can't cross because then it affects their own identity. What is that boundary? What will happen if they crossed it? What will it do to their own sense of history and the sense of their own tradition? Why is it that they cannot be at that boundary and be in both? There seems to be a tension, mutual tension, and a decision has to be made whether the person wants to be on this side or the person wants to be on that side. So I'm close with an example. A very prominent guy is called T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot is considered probably the most important poet of the 20th century, American poet. And he wrote many great poems, very famous ones, The Wasteland, the Four Quartets. And if any of your kids goes to study English, they'll study T.S. Eliot's poetry. What is not known that he was a Sanskrit scholar and he was studying Upanishads. He had Upanishads, Gita, and many of the translations in the margin from the Sanskrit book he was writing in English margins, his translations. And those passages are some of the passages in his most famous poems. And there's Dr. Cleo Kearns in Princeton. I worked with her. She did her PhD dissertation on T.S. Eliot and Indic traditions. That's her PhD topic. And Cambridge University Press published that book about a decade ago. And our foundation got the rights to publish an Indian edition, so we have an Indian edition now. People want, I can get you that. And basically, what this lady did is she went and looked at the personal diaries of T.S. Eliot, which were not known to the public. She went and lived with T.S. Eliot's widow and got access to all his personal diaries, his personal collection. And she found that at Harvard, he was studying Sanskrit for several years, and he had a whole Sanskrit collection, and as he was practicing translation into English, those passages ended up entering some of his most important poems. That's a very interesting thing. Now, at some point he writes in his diaries that the profoundness of the Sanskrit classics, what he calls Sanskrit classics, the great Sanskrit thinkers, great Sanskrit texts and philosophers, that profoundness is so great that all the American great Western thinkers look like schoolboys. That's his term. That by comparison, it makes the American thinkers, he named all these great thinkers, they seem like schoolboys. That's how he says. And then, a few years later, Eliot contemplates that this is a profound journey of life. He's very impressed. He wants to go into this further. And he contemplates moving to India. He writes that to continue this journey, what I should do is give up everything, go to India and just sort of continue in this journey. That's what he's thinking of doing. And then he's writing in his diary that what will he have to give up, to do that? Is it practical? And he writes at one point, very candidly, he says that to go any further into this philosophy, I will have to let go. I will have to let go of my identity as an Englishman. I will no longer be able to hang on to my sense of identity as an Englishman, as an American. And so, am I willing to do that? That's what he asks. And then he concludes that he's not willing to give up his friends and family and be alienated and go all the way into this. And so he decides he will not go to India, and he will not pursue this going into deeper and deeper layers of Indian philosophy. Now, he's stuck in the middle, because this is the middle point where he's sufficiently kind of tainted with Sanskrit, if you will. Yeah? He's sufficiently contaminated with this Indian thought. He's no longer this pure, like he originally was a Westerner. He's had enough of this experience brought into his life. And yet he's not gone over the bridge, gone over the border and become totally Indianized either. He's sort of neither here nor there. So he decides to get re-baptized as a Christian. A very public ceremony. Now, baptizing is usually done for a child. You don't see too many people who are in their 40s getting baptized. But it is done sometimes. If you feel that somehow your solid faith in Christianity has been compromised, then as a kind of sort of like doing another yagna kind of thing, you know, you do like some people get married again, you know, to the same person, you know, they get married a second time just to kind of revive that. So he has a very, in Harvard, he has a very public, and it's not just re-baptized at a later age, but in public. So with all people watching, you know, he's getting re-baptized in public ceremony. And then he writes that now that I'm very clear who I am, this mishmash, wishy-washy mixture is not there. I'm very clear. I'm now Christian, brought back to Christianity. Now I can continue studying Sanskrit as something about them. Now it's not confusing as to is it mine, is it them? Am I studying about myself when I'm studying it, or am I just out of curiosity studying about some other people? So it's a very interesting, what I call a U-turn. He returns back to himself, and there is a certain rejection, not a rejection in the sense of denigrating or debunking the Sanskrit tradition, but limiting how far it will influence him, how far he's willing to go and not go any further. So that's the sort of discovery one makes if one keeps looking for what are the differences. And when people come from one side or when people come from the other side of this boundary, how far they're willing to go and why aren't they willing to cross over and go to the other side beyond a certain point. So this methodology that I've just described to you is what led me to many kinds of differences which I had to test with outsiders from other traditions and insiders from our own traditions, and then go back to the drawing board and come up with something better. And I kept repeating this book, rewriting this book maybe 10 times. Written this book about 10 times. And given it, every time I've given it to scholars of both traditions. And rewritten after their feedback comes in. So the book that you now have is a product of this sort of journey.